Hello kids, this is Mr. Whistler with your video lesson of the day, and today we're going to be talking about the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. We have a couple of vocab words today. The first one is blockade, and a blockade is to close off a country's ports, to cut off an area with ships, to stop supplies from coming in or out of the area. The French Navy's blockade at Yorktown kept the British from escaping, and it kept them from getting needed supplies. Don't let the British ships in, my friends. Second vocab word is ratify. To give official approval to. To approve. Now, ratify means to approve, so if Congress tries to change the Constitution, for an example, then their changes have to go out to the 50 states, and 3/4 of the states have to ratify the change to make it happen. So ratify means to approve. After the Revolutionary War, they went to Paris and hashed out a peace treaty. They wrote it up and they all signed it. Well, the representatives there had to bring it back to our Congress for our Congress to ratify or approve it. So the American Congress ratified the Treaty of Paris after the Revolutionary War. Let's sign the Treaty of Paris. Yes, let's give our official approval. Yes, it's time for peace. Battle of Yorktown. Now, the war was at a critical point, and both armies needed a victory really bad. The Patriots have turned themselves into a regular army, and they were able to go with the British toe-to-toe. The war was very close at this point. They'd been fighting for 6 years, and the next big battle could decide the war. So both armies had troops at New York, and both armies had troops at Yorktown. George Washington had plans to attack Clinton in New York and was camped north of the city. To carry out his plan, though, he needed French ships. So here's how it kind of looked. George Washington was camped there. Clinton was camped south of him. And Washington was waiting for some French ships to come, and what he really wanted to do was blockade this area here so the British couldn't get supplies in and they couldn't retreat using the Navy out. But when the ships came, they actually came up to Rhode Island. Now, I'm not sure why they went to Rhode Island. I'm not sure if they were out of supplies and that was the closest place, but for whatever reason, they did not go to New York. So before they could get down to New York, and these ships carried 5,000 soldiers, 5,000 French soldiers. But before they could get back to New York to help Washington carry out his plan, some British ships came in behind the French and blockaded them in and trapped them in. So these British ships messed up Washington's plan. Well, now Washington had to wait for more ships to carry out his plan. He had to wait a year, and the French troops joined Washington while he was waiting. So they worked their way down to New York and waited with Washington. Now, when the French warships finally did come, and I don't know why they came here either, they ended up coming down to Yorktown. So, here's the situation. You have Washington and his troops up here. You have Clinton and the main British army with Washington. Washington actually wanted to attack Clinton. But the ships he needed to achieve his plan went down to Yorktown. So, Washington changes his plan. He gets an idea that since the ships went down to Yorktown, he decided he would attack Yorktown instead. So now he has a problem because he needs to keep this a secret. If Washington takes all his troops and then starts heading down to Yorktown, and Clinton sees him, he's just going to take his troops and follow him down. So if Washington gets down here with his troops, Clinton will come behind him, and that'll be a bad situation. So Washington needs to figure out a way to get his troops down there without Clinton finding out. So Washington was pretty smart. He was successful at tricking the enemy, and he really tricks him right here. So what he does was, I guess back in these days, that if an army was going to stay for an extended period of time, and they thought that the battle was going to take a long time, they would not cook over fires anymore. They needed a more efficient way to feed the troops, so they made these brick ovens, and they made a lot of these brick ovens. And they knew that the British were spying on him, because they were spying on the British. And they knew when the British saw these brick ovens being built, they were planning on staying for a while. So another thing that he did that I thought was really a good idea is he created battle plans for an attack on New York up here. So Washington had already changed his mind. He was going to go down here to Yorktown, so he didn't need battle plans for New York. But what he did is he created them, and then he let them fall into British hands. Now, this was a great idea, because the British, they were like, oh my gosh, I found these battle plans. I know exactly what Washington's going to do. And then they got real sidetracked on trying to counter everything Washington was going to do on these battle plans. Well, Washington, when the British were all distracted, he snuck his army out and went down to Yorktown. So he left a few soldiers behind, so when the British did look over there, it looked like there were still soldiers there. He left enough behind that it hadn't looked like they left, but he took most of them with him. So the British were completely fooled, and Washington's troops marched 200 miles in 15 days. His plan worked perfectly. Washington surrounds the British and wins the Battle of Yorktown. So the French Navy played a decisive role at Yorktown, because they blocked the British from escaping by sea, and they blocked the British from resupplying the troops here at Yorktown, which you can see on the red dot. After the Battle of Yorktown, King George III agreed to give Americans their freedom. Now, it probably went something like this. He was eating dinner in the palace, and one of his servants had heard about the results of the Battle of Yorktown, and he really didn't want to talk to the king, because he knew the king was going to be mad. So he walks in, and he's kind of hemming and hawing, and he's like, "Sire?" "Yes, what do you need?" "I'm trying to eat my dinner." "I got news from the Battle of Yorktown." "Well, tell me, spit it out, man." "We lost." "What? Those imbeciles beat us? I can't believe it. I'm sick of this. This is costing us too much money. I believe I'll give the Americans their freedom. I do not want to continue this war. So, King George III decided it was going to be too expensive to continue the war, so he gave the Americans the freedom after the Battle of Yorktown. The historical significance of Yorktown was that it convinced the British to end the war. And that pretty much finishes our American Revolution unit. So I want you guys to use this note taker, use this thinking map, and write an essay explaining the Battle of Yorktown. It goes something like this. In 1781, the war was close, and the next victory by either army could win the war. Both sides have armies in New York City and in Yorktown, and Washington decided to attack New York City. But to achieve his plan, he was going to need French ships. When the French ships finally came, after 2 years of waiting, they went to Rhode Island. Well, before they could get down to New York, where Washington needed them, a British fleet came in and blockaded them into that port. So Washington couldn't use those ships. So he had to wait for more ships. And he had to wait for a year. Now, everything in these days took a long time. So, I mean, it was probably 3 months to get across the ocean and 3 months back. So it's just like half a year just for travel time. And then they had to get everything ready. So Washington had to wait for more ships. He had to wait for a year. And when they finally did come, they came to Yorktown. Unbelievable. So he gets the idea to attack Yorktown instead, and he has to figure out ways to sneak his army out, and he tricks Clinton because he doesn't know he leaves until it's too late for the British to help. So Washington ends up surrounding the British. They fight a 3-week battle. The Americans win, and this is the battle that convinces the British to end the war. All right, kids, write your essays and have a good day.